Let me verify.
Wait, your chipper introduction.
Okay, we are live.
Right. Sure.
Okay, so we get some viewers. Whoops, I gotta press the pause button.
I knew I was going to stay on for more than like a second.
Okay, hopefully someone jumps on soon. Oh, we got 6 viewers.
Nice.
Woo!
Hello, viewers. Announce yourself in the comments.
Say what's up.
Yeah.
So I got heartbreaking news. I don't know if I should wait for more people to join or not, but Lulu's gone.
Lulu, your dog?
Yeah, I stepped on her accidentally. It's not funny at all. I mean, what's up, Spencer? Yeah, no, I mean, we tried to save her, but like her head wasn't even on anymore. So super glue wouldn't work. Nothing.
Okay, holy fuck.
No, we're all allergic, and I'm like violently allergic. I've never been allergic to anything. You know, I look like an alcoholic. Why is my nose all huge and red?
We're talking about who looks like trash right now. I'm going to take the cake on that one.
Your nose turns red when you drink?
Oh, I don't know. Didn't that like W.C. Fields, like that big, huge red nose, alcoholic nose thing?
I went to school with a lot of Asians, and I just know you get the Asian glow. A lot.
Yeah, no, I just ate Thai food. It was really spicy.
Oh, totally.
That has something to do with it.
Talk about food right now.
Yeah, so it was disgusting.
We were in the kitchen, and Dave was making his food, and I measured my 100 grams of chicken, and I was like, this is my entire meal right now.
Oh, 100 grams. I'm sorry, it's a typo. It's supposed to be 70. Thank you, Samson.
I might cry.
What's up? Guarido.
So
man, I'm so bad at names. Nick, nothing's good right now, but no, everything's good. Yeah. So, anyways, I'm like, we're all allergic, and I was like really allergic, and I've never been allergic to anything. I've had dogs my whole life, other than like when Joy and I first got married. I've always had a dog since I was a child.
Yeah.
And I've never seen a dog. I love dogs. Never even seen a dog and not stopped to pet one. And as far as I knew, was never allergic. But I was so allergic to this thing. My whole skin was like breaking out in hives and stuff. I'd look like I was covered in like a million mosquito bites. I itched everywhere.
Was it just you, or is the whole family?
Everyone. Emmy's kind of allergic to everything. She's, I think, maybe better adapted. Jory was allergic too, but I don't think no one was as bad as me. I couldn't even stand it.
Huh.
Even taking like Allegra, and I just like itched so bad. It was, but well, you know, it was a hard decision. But Jory found like a lady who's had a bunch of Chihuahuas, and I think hers just died not too long ago. And she winters in Florida, and because this thing shivered for everything, you know, it's from Mexico, and so it'll be in Florida in the winters, and so hopefully she went to a good home. But
good.
I mean, like it was handpicked. It wasn't like we just gave her away. I mean, Joy put everyone through a screening process.
That's good.
Justin wouldn't get me up to 285, 290. I thought we're on the process, aren't we? What are we? We're almost there.
I can't even see or read. Everything is blurry.
Wet basements. I love everyone's names. So if anyone's got any questions, I don't think we have. Do we have any questions planned, or were we just hoping people are going to
have questions? I got some topics we could bring up.
I'm probably only down for a minute, so if anyone has questions about PT things or prep related things.
Oh yeah, Kyle, that's right. Well, we're backing off for a little bit. We'll get you up there. I just didn't want to get you too fat.
That sounds great.
Kyle's like, I want to be fat. Man, is this what I always look like? These things always make me feel terrible about myself. What are the like the filter the people use where their face is all like white haze blurred?
Has like the fake freckles on there that make you look really pretty, Justin.
Oh, I don't know how to do that. I'll find out though.
People do that on live streams?
No, I was mostly kidding.
Guess I ought to put down here. What?
I got all these old banners from. All right. So, okay. What's up, Team Troponin? What's up, Chris? I remember being fat, Bobby. Thanks. What are you implying? You remember being like me? Or Kyle? Because only one of them's true. I won't say which is which. Can you feel a pump with every body part, or some not so much others? Example, lat pump. If you're contracting the muscle, it's going to bring blood flow to the muscle, which is going to bring fluid and going to feel like a pump. So you're not going to get amazing pumps super easily from every muscle. Like for me, like something like a tricep, I get a pump no matter what. Where chest, I really have to work for. But yes, you should. Well, Danny, I don't know if you want to speak on it. I know you need to get out.
Yeah, I was literally just gonna say this. A lot depends on brain mapping too. So like the like very base level answer is like, yeah, you should be able to, but you know, people talk about how important is it to feel a muscle, and you'll get people on both sides of the camp saying yes or no. And if I'm going on and things don't make sense, stop me, because food. But
Danny's close to a show right now.
I've been in prep for 20 weeks now. Hey,
who's counting?
But yeah, so brain mapping is really, really important. I think the idea of proprioception can be important too, where again, like, are you going to feel every muscle? People are going to say yes and no, but fact of the matter is, if the somatosensory cortex in your brain is not highly attuned to and developed in a certain area, what's called kind of brain smudging, which means that the area of the brain that represents that particular muscle group or that particular body part can kind of overlap and almost be misrepresented as a different body part. And so you get these kind of like weird almost carryover effects to where you should be feeling a lot and you might be feeling something else. And I think the longer you train and the more, I don't want to say dysfunctional, but the more your movement patterns change, that changes kind of brain smudging effect.
Do you think though that you could get a pump that would be visible but that you wouldn't feel very well if you had that smudging going on?
Probably.
Yeah, Danny might forget what a pump is. It's been a while since she's had enough nutrients. But yeah, especially, well, the reason I would say, because you say lat pump, and I think that's a common error. It could be that you just might not be able to really get a pump there, but lats are an area that people tend to have a hard time. It's for a lot of people, their upper back is strong, or their bicep dominant or shoulder dominant, and it's easy to do lat movements without really working the lat. Because I was one for a long period of time, and I would have argued that I never really got a lat pump until I learned to contract my lats properly. For me, it was DC rows that really kind of created the feeling, which forced me to completely change all my lat work. My pull down motion was forced to change because I realized I wasn't using my lats and pull downs. My grip changed. For rack chins, I stopped doing an overhand grip and I use a neutral grip. I use a neutral grip for almost all pull down type things now, or possibly an underhand, but my wrist flexibility isn't that great. And so I don't feel any benefit.
It's really important to remember that lat training in particular tends to be one that people are really hit and miss on. And people tend to be really good at either feeling their lats with rows or pull downs or neither. If you're having a hard time, like, finding and feeling a lat, there are two things to keep in mind. Number one is your ribcage position. So many of us either live in a super flattened state or hyperkyphotic state, and when the ribcage functions as a fulcrum for the lat stop right off of, you might want to try just playing with how much flexion or extension you have there. Most of us are overextended and overly flattened. But I think the other thing to keep in mind is you have to improve proprioception. So if you have between a pull down and a row, one that you're really good at connecting with, do more of that to improve that kind of somatosensory cortex development in the brain. Because the better you get at connecting with that muscle, even in one plane of movement, you're going to have better carryover to other planes. And I think lat training in particular is one of those things where I actually am getting ready to make a post on this. People are so hell-bent on doing it the way that we're told on social media. But the lat's a triplanar muscle. It's going to operate in 3 planes of motion. So you might just need to, quite frankly, change your body position a little bit away from what the fitfluencers are going to tell you to do, and actually own your body and own your positions more than just doing what other people tell you to do on social media. So I always encourage my clients to get a little creative with it and think about exploring movement rather than like trying to do it one right or wrong way, because the right or the wrong for one person is going to be totally different for you.
Yes, Kyle. These are the DC rows are the same as Dante or Troponin rows. I like that they're called Troponin rows, but Dante showed them to me, so I won't take the claim. All right. Well, wait. Let's see what else we got. How big of an issue is umbilical hernia in terms of training impedance and cosmetic appearance in bodybuilding?
Uh,
Depends, I guess. I've never had one, so I can't speak personally.
couldn't it depend wildly on how severe it is?
Yeah, and I would say, what's the goal? Is the goal for training or is the goal for posing?
Well, he's asked for both. I mean, I don't know that you can just give an answer to that, because some people are going to have it and have real no change in cosmetic appearance and maybe no really adjustment in their training, and some people it's going to be very visible and it might really affect their training. So I think that's too hard to just give a lump sum answer.
I have one that I feel like it's gotten a hair worse this off season, but it's still not too bad. But I've never worked on stomach control, and I should probably do it for this prep, but it might never impacts training. Or it's never.
Yeah, and you train heavy too, so yeah. Okay, L5 to S1 herniation, annular tear, and stenosis 2 years ago. I can pull heavy pain-free if I'm incredibly controlled in my bracing and neutral spine position, but I tweak my back squatting. Wet basements. You wish you could back squat. I mean, back squatting's fun if you like to lift heavy, but it depends on what your goals are. If your goal is to be a power lifter, that sucks. If your goal is to build muscle, there are a lot of great leg and quad movements that are not back squats.
What's the problem too? Is it pain or is it training?
Well, he's not going to answer.
I mean,
what's the question rather? I can't.
Oh, there was no actual question with a question mark. It was just stating a problem.
So the thing with L5S1 is that that's where you're going to get a lot of compression. Generally, even things like a hack squat, if you're not careful on your positioning, can start to compress that area. So the biggest thing that you can do at that point is make sure you're on point with your positioning. One of the things that I use a lot as like training as we have for people is accommodating resistance, because it forces you to control and it gives some approximation to the joints. And the more change there is in the tension, the more the neuromuscular system has to react to actually stabilize things. And the better you get at stabilizing from the correct areas, the less compression you're going to get in that area.
Yeah. I mean, my positioning on these hack squats improved quite a bit once Danny had me go against bands, not reverse band.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the squat that you're talking about, but you could probably rig up something similar if you really
But even for L5S1 too, one of the things you might want to look at is your pelvis position in terms of your start position. What a lot of people don't think about with squatting based movements is that the pelvis has to do two things. Number one, it has to move horizontally and it has to move vertically. If you're starting in a horizontally displaced position, it's going to change the amount of hip rotation you have, which is going to affect your ability to get to a decent area of depth without borrowing movement from your back. So one of the other things people talk about stability and bracing all the time, but one of the other things that you can look at is your hip internal and external rotation. You're probably limited in internal if you're a bigger guy, or if you sit for a prolonged period of time, but a lot of people forget that you actually have to be able to have good external rotation to get below parallel depth based on the Limart model. So make sure you're looking at both.
Okay, Thomas, Sierra, on a high day deep in prep, how do you deal with the client's fear to put on fat? Well, I mean, really, education. It's just a math thing, If I just explain why you won't put on fat while the majority, we're eating excess calories, but they'll be stored as glycogen. I mean, that's all you can do. It's like you got to be logical. You can be afraid of anything if you want, I guess, but it's not going to add fat, And if it really matters that much when you're deep in prep 3 weeks out and you insist you don't want a high day, I might just not give you a high day. I guarantee you in 2 more days you're going to be wishing you had the high day, and it won't be an issue anymore. You're not going to put on fat. I mean, I will explain the mechanisms for why you will store those calories. The excess calories above what you burn will be stored, but because they come from glucose, and you're in a glycogen deficient state, the majority of them will be stored as glycogen rather than fat, which will improve your training, will improve the calories you burn during training the rest of the week. But if it's that big of a deal, we'll skip one. And if you're late in prep and you skip one, you're not going to complain the next time when you get one.
Yeah, no. And you're not even really going to feel that. I don't know about you, but every time I have a high day, I always think, I'm going to feel better. And the next day I'm like, no.
Yeah, but deep in prep, I mean, really, if you're deep in prep, high day's not doing anything anymore.
Yeah,
it's not even bringing you back to baseline. It's like keeping you from, death. I don't even know.
Life, except
yeah,
that's a stretch.
I think the first prep we had, we were so depleted because we were doing so much HIIT, and I think like every other high day, that whole prep was a unlimited high day, and yet even still, I had to get down to like 190 to get in shape, but near the end there, my weight wouldn't budge a pound after a high day.
Yeah.
But,
I guess if you're really concerned and you don't trust my explanation of it, by the time you get deep into prep, you'll have gone through enough of them where you won't have the fear anymore. You'll understand how they work.
Do you get that concern less often from clients who've already done an off season with you? Because I feel like
yeah. Because if clients have done an off season with me, then they understand that, you know, how high their food volume is, and they're not especially fat, you know, when we start prep.
Yeah.
I'm gonna bounce, guys. I am
Thanks, Danny.
17 days out from Chicago Pro, and
Who's counting?
who's counting? Definitely not me. All right, bye, guys.
All right. Okay, let's see what else we got. Nick, you've been on a 6-year hiatus from what you consider actual training. At 41 years old, what do you think is a realistic amount of muscle someone my age could put on in a year? That's a real open-ended question. I need to know how much muscle are you regaining that you've lost before? What are you willing to do as far as PEDs? What have you done in the past as far as PEDs? I mean, but it can vary from anything. Like if you're someone like who's the tall bodybuilder that took like a decade off and came back? Was it Tony?
Tony Freeman?
Yeah, Tony Freeman. He took years off and came back at like age 41, and he probably gained 50 pounds that first year. You know, so if you've been like pro bodybuilder size and took a 6-year hiatus, you're going to get very close to that size again very quickly. So it's a really open question. How much new muscle are you going to gain? The most you can will be if you're using PEDs, similar to the most you could any age. I mean, 41 still like within your prime, really, as far as bodybuilding is concerned.
That's a good point. I mean, I think it's also an interesting question of what if he didn't have to regain anything? He was just maybe kind of maintaining up until now for a few years. I feel like that's plenty young enough to where if you're willing to pump the gas of PEDs a bit and really push the food, why can't you still gain that, roughly 1 gram?
Well, I think you can. Yeah, I think 20 pounds is about. I mean, we're all fighting for the same 15 pounds. Really, where we might get a few great years where we can get up, maybe 20 or more when everything's clicking. But we're all fighting for that same, basically 1 pound a month.
Well, if you have two clients of any age, and one of them has a stellar off season of like 15 to 20 pounds, and the other one has kind of a lackluster off season of like 5 to 10, is it because one of them really like had better genes or anything else than the other, or did one of them just do it more?
It's never age. If it's either one of them didn't do everything that they needed to do. I mean, there's just so much that needs to be done, and I've been on both sides. I've been on like where I'm doing everything. I don't even know how to word this. I've been where I'm obsessed, where really all I think about all day is bodybuilding, and I've been where I do all the right things. I eat the right foods. I do the training, but it's not my obsession. And there is something about that little extra where you're just really always thinking about it and doing every little thing that does add up. So, I mean, but at 41, if you're not on PEDs, you're going to have a harder time. But if you're on PEDs, 41 means nothing to me. Big Paul's what, 46, 47?
Yeah.
So, okay. Why are hamstrings such a weak body part on a lot of amateurs? Because no one trains them their first few years,
Yeah.
It's hard or properly. Guys do 3 sets of leg curls at the end of a leg workout for the first 6 years they work out usually.
Yeah. Nothing's going to grow well if you give it so little effort. It's like, I think you can see a similar thing with people who train arms seriously or don't. Like, I think a huge part of the benefit of having an arm day isn't that there's something magical about having an arm day that you really need all that energy, but if you have an entire day where all the protein synthesis that you can get for, say, 24 hours is going to that muscle that just got that stimulus, it's a hell of a lot more effective than just tacking stuff onto the end of a workout. I feel like this is maybe a little less of an issue in the last decade or so because that has popularized really prioritizing hamstrings every leg workout. There are a lot of people with good hams these days.
Yeah, it's such a big thing in the sport. I mean, it's what's up. Hams and like posterior chain just in general, it started with Dorian with the back, and then it used to be, everyone had chest and arms, and then people would have quads. And then like Dorian came in with a back, and then everyone had to have a back. And then all that's left after that is glutes and hamstrings. And, and it's kind of like, who's the new kid in school? He's that kid that transfers over from a different school and is really popular for a short period of time. The newest thing is really hamstrings.
This is reminding me of posts you see on like bodybuilding.com back 15, 20 years ago. And it's
Yeah.
like progress picture, and they'd be like, I think I did pretty good, like except for legs and back. And I think, oh, so except for 80% of you?
Yeah. Except for everything but chest and arms. Okay, if you're traveling to a third world country for a month but want to stay on track, what are some best practices in that situation? Third world, like, are we like third world? Like, there's no gyms and very difficult to find food, or third world, like you're going to somewhere in Central America, because that would be a big difference. I mean, all you can do, the best practices are find food that are as close to bodybuilding foods as possible, and find a place to train. I mean, that's all you can do. How important is pressing for big delts?
I think it's important.
Overhead pressing, I think you got to do some form of pressing, but you get a lot of front delt activation with, incline and any chest press. But go ahead, David.
Yeah, I still think it's super important. I know there's like a handful of guys who say that after a certain point in their training career, they just stop doing any overhead pressing and they basically do all their delt work with raises. But I don't know. Dante was always big on this. He'd be like, do you really think you need to worry that much about side delt work if you're overhead pressing, something ridiculous like Smith pressing 4 plates or dumbbell pressing the 150s? I still think you need to train them directly, but I think you get a little more mid delt activation than you think when you're doing overhead press. There is leverage for that muscle to work there. I think has been talking about this a lot lately, but unless you have a shoulder issue or some other kind of issue that prevents you from doing an overhead or really high incline press, I don't know why you would avoid it, unless you've just found that it doesn't give you anything. But
I don't see how I want it though. I mean, like what other, because it's not like a pull down, or it's not like a ladder exercise that you could easily involve other move. What other body parts are doing the pressing. Yeah. Just as a general rule, I feel like for any body part, if one exercise is harder, gets you more out of breath, and allows you to use more weight, there's a reason for that. It's activating more muscle tissue. And so that's just always been my thought. It's like, yeah, you can get around, you can get really good side delts, and rear delts especially are very important. And so you can get a lot of rear delt growth from rear delt isolation. But if you want to be a mass monster, if you want to be 300 pounds, you got to do the stuff that moves a lot of weight through space.
Yeah. The no overhead pressing is one of those things that also Dante always harped on. It's like you'll have guys that are big now, and they'll talk about the training they get out, and that's not always the training that got them to where they are. So if you have a guy who built huge delts overhead pressing 400 pounds, and then he decides it's not worth it anymore, well, it's not really the best source of information.
That's real common. You'll see a lot of when pros are really trying to refine things, or not, especially trying to add size, especially pros, when now size might not even benefit them anymore. Yeah. And people will see what they're doing and think it's a different thing. If you're trying to add the most amount of like protein tissue to your muscles, you need to do the thing that activates the most muscles.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, can you guys hear that? Is my wife like shooting an AR-15 next?
That sounds fun.
How many grams of sodium do you recommend if you have a deficiency or sweat out all your electrolytes? Well, in that case, whatever it takes to not be deficient. I can't give you a number on that, but if you get blood work and your blood sodium levels are low, you need more sodium. In general, I recommend most men be somewhere in like the 6 to 8 gram range, which is high, and women probably in like the 4 to 6 or 4 to 7 gram range.
Danny and I are both obscenely high.
Yeah, sodium was never a thing with me.
I don't like weigh my sodium ever on purpose, but I always make a pot of rice for all the rice meals at the beginning of the day. And I've had the pot sitting on the scale after weighing out the rice, and I'll zero it out, and I'll throw the salt in there because I like to salt it beforehand. And I'll notice the scale will go up like 8 grams just from the rice that I'm putting in the rice. So it's probably like double that for the day.
Yeah.
And Danny probably literally eats, not relatively, but absolutely more salt than I do.
Yeah, I especially if it's a seasoning I like, while I'm cooking, I'll pour it in my hand and kind of eat it out of my hand while I'm cooking. God, yeah, because I don't understand people who don't like sodium. It's just like the tingly, like because the tingly is really interesting because it's really probably like the electrolyte. I mean, it's like electricity going through your tongue. But have I heard Milos nutrition ideology? That's a tough one, because I've heard quite a few of Milos's nutrition ideology, and I think Milos is an amazing nutritionist. I think about as good as it gets in the game. I think he's got some really interesting ideas, but I've seen yeah, I seen the same thing where he's had guys eat 250 grams of protein and 1,200 grams of carbs. So 600 plus grams of protein a day for a 300-pound bodybuilder. That's really not that outrageous. You know, that's like a 200-pound bodybuilder eating 400 grams, which you see people all the time claim to be doing. I don't think you need that many grams of protein. I think you get so many calories before you start storing body fat. And once you've absolutely maxed out the amount of protein necessary for muscle protein synthesis, after that, I think the focus should be on carbs and fats. And I don't know what that exact protein amount is. And we've talked about that before. It's probably somewhere in the order of like 100, 125 grams a day is an absolute minimum to maximize muscle protein synthesis. So in general, you probably want to double that just to be safe, which puts you at 200 to 250 grams for most people. It's kind of a minimum, but I don't think you need 600 grams. But I mean, the thing is, 600 plus grams is like over a pound of protein structure, over a pound of amino acids. So if you were actually utilizing 600 grams, you'd be gaining 1.25 pounds of muscle every single day. You're not gaining that every day. So most of that protein is not being utilized. That's my problem with that, is like no one stops to think. It's like if you were pumping like 600 gallons of gasoline into a gas tank and you were only getting 2 miles before you ran out of gas, you wouldn't think like, let me pump more gas.
Yeah.
Hole in the gas tank.
I wonder if, like, people ask these questions a lot, and I wonder if they've ever even tried anywhere close to that, because you're not super high in protein, but I'm like eating a decent amount of it, and I think my average meal is around 6.5 to 7 ounces of meat cooked. So 600 grams is you're approaching 12 ounces of cooked meat per meal, which is over a pound raw, 6 times a day.
Yeah. So yeah. And protein's the hardest thing to get down in the off season. You know, I mean, when your appetite's dead. In prep, you know, it's a little bit different, because in prep, protein, you know, like as much as 30% and probably on average about 15% of the protein you eat gets burned up just in the digestion of it. And I don't want to spend too much on one topic, but yeah, it's not my favorite thing, I guess. Thoughts on injectable L-carnitine? The mechanism definitely works. L-carnitine works, and injectable gets it to a place where it can work. Now, the problems are people use it for fat loss, and L-carnitine requires insulin to get to the cell. So insulin levels are going to be low in a diet. And the second problem is you need probably at least a gram a day to notice any benefit of it in a contest prep. And that's a lot of injection volume. If you want to do 3 cc's, you know, every single day for 4 months straight, that's great. I see it works. I'm sure you'll probably see a small benefit by the end of prep, but I don't think I've ever had anyone keep it up an entire prep. I've had hundreds of people want to try it. I don't think I've had a single person, but going into, you know, a week out of prep, ask me, hey, what do I do about an injectable L-carnitine for peak week?
Yeah. I think Meadows was pretty big on it, but for very short durations, because he said at that point in his career, it was the only time he would ever use insulin was when he used them in conjunction. But I think he only did it for like 4 weeks at a time.
Yeah, which is about the most I think people. I mean, it's just so much volume. You know, it's better now. Like some companies are making higher, but for a while, like you were seeing like 100 milligrams per milliliter. So you got to do 10 mLs a day. You know, this is back, you know, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, Milos would compete. Milos is in shape all the time. Yeah, Milos is. Yeah, I've seen Milos days out of a show and backstage, or not minutes backstage, days out of a show and on stage. It wasn't quite that different. Milos, I don't want to say anything disparaging, because I think he's a fantastic coach, nutritionist, and really, you know, used himself to learn as much as you can about the sport of bodybuilding, was incredibly detailed and still has all his own notebooks. So I don't want to say anything against him, but I don't necessarily agree that he would transform that quickly, because I'd seen him days out of a show and he looked like everyone else does days out of a show.
Low amounts of myofibrillary hypertrophy, all sarcoplasmic.
I think he's talking about Milos. Yeah,
I'm still skeptical as to how much you can even train for sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. Like,
yeah, it's like, well, I remember doing a seminar in 2015 with John Meadows where he was talking about injectable carnitine actually, and at that point there was still an argument whether sarcoplasmic was a thing. It was very recently that it was even on Wikipedia or accepted to any level. So I think we still just don't even know that much about it. What's up, Jimmy?
Oh, hey, dude.
Samson Yang, You might be better to answer this, Dave. How to fix knees caving in during compound quad pressing if the eccentric is controlled and knees are tracking outwards?
That kind of depends on how badly they're caving in and how deep you're going. I don't know, like this was always kind of a thing that people would talk about when I was at powerlifting. I don't know if it's still a trendy topic, but you have to get a little bit of internal rotation at the bottom of a squat if you want to be able to externally rotate out of it. And that's not universal for every single squat stance, but most of us aren't standing so close that you can avoid that. If you have like a medium wide stance and you're getting to depth, then you're going to have to let your knees come in just a little bit so then your glutes can work to externally rotate you and use your hips to get out of the hole. But that's a barbell squat. So if it's happening on like just leg presses and hack squats and things where you can manipulate your foot position to use your quads, you might have really weak glutes. A lot of people are like really bad in their hips. And it seems like when people talk about quad training, they want to talk about like, oh, you got to put your feet low, you got to get as much knee flexion as you possibly can. I don't really think that's universally true. My quads have really blown up the last few years, and I've never taken a super low foot position. And I have to get my hips involved because I have long legs. If I try to just have my knees a foot in front of my toes, it's just going to kill my knees, and I can't get my hips working at all. So
yeah, I really hate that like for anyone listening, there's no thing you should do for any movement other than find the movement pattern that activates the muscle you're trying to work as much as possible. For many people, like you just on a leg press or something, for example, for many people, moving your foot lower on the platform will more on average more likely make your quads work more, but it doesn't, nothing is absolute. You need to find like going all the way to the bottom just because everyone says putting your feet low makes your quads work more doesn't mean are your quads actually working more? You just need to find the position.
Yeah. Well, that's great. If you can get more depth and more knee flexion while also having your feet a little higher on the platform, don't think that you're just making it a glute exercise now. That could still be a great quad exercise.
Yeah, the best thing I think, like, because I didn't really start training for like bodybuilding or hypertrophy until really like 8 years into my training. I wanted to be big and muscular, but it was always I wanted to be strong, or I liked powerlifting, or I was lifting for football. And the most important thing for me was like realizing that before I was trying to get strong on a squat, or I was trying to get strong on a bench, or I was trying to get strong on a hang clean, or whatever it was. I was just trying to move more weight in. Was to realize that no, I'm no longer squatting. I'm training my quads. I'm no longer bench pressing. I'm training my chest. And then I put everything out of the window. And I used to get flack all the time for my lateral raise form. Everyone would tell me my lateral raise form was terrible, even though my delts overpowered everything else in my body. Because when I was doing lateral raise, I never even thought about the motion. I was just trying to contract my side delts and feel that. And it turned the form that did that was what a form everyone else said was terrible form. But for me, I didn't care. I usually had my eyes closed. Even I was just thinking. I was just trying to pull with my my lateral delts.
That kind of brings me to another kind of nobody asked the question, but I'll answer it. Like there's this issue of should you use more or less weight to make the exercise like easier or harder. I think people coming from a strength training background often have to go lighter if they even want to train the muscle they're trying to train. So if you're used to squatting like 6-7 plates as a powerlifter, but your quads are mediocre, then yeah, you're going to have to use some unimpressive weight on like a pendulum or a hack squat until you build your quads up. And it only makes sense because if the muscle's weak visually, it's probably weak in a motion that actually uses that muscle. But on the flip side, I think a lot of people who just went straight into bodybuilding think that everything that makes a movement harder and makes it harder to move a lot of weight is good. And that's not necessarily the case either. Because if you go from an exercise that doesn't really line up with the muscle you're trying to train to one that lines up with it really well, you might end up actually stronger because you're not putting yourself in some weird position that makes the movement unnecessarily hard.
All right, Jimmy asks us, Jimmy Loney, what's up? What did you guys think about Phil versus Hassan in Orlando? Man, I didn't get to see it.
Really?
Well, apparently they were tied and they gave it to Phil. I don't know if they don't like Hassan or what, but the guy, they've been telling Hassan to come in shape for years, and he finally came in looking pretty freaky in a couple shows this year. And I guess, I don't know, they were tied at the end of the show, but Phil beat him in finals. I've been out of town, so I was just kind of getting very blips of that because I was out of town, and like any time I had to get on the internet, I had to be spent answering client emails. So I really didn't see much more than that. If anyone else wants to comment on that, but I feel for Hassan because that sucks if that's what it was.
Yeah, I honestly, that's the one show this season I haven't really caught any of. I'm looking at Phil's picks right now. I mean, he's not like, if he was sharper than Hassan, then Hassan must have really been off because Phil in these picks doesn't look amazing.
Well, I think he was better I think he placed better at finals, and they made up some rule that it was a tie score, but that's what I heard, but I don't know. Maybe someone else to comment. Josh P. Just wanted to say that I bought and am loving the massive carb cycling program from your site. Currently using that with DC two-way split 4 times a week with great success. Thank you, Josh. Yeah, I mean, like sometimes I look at Massive and Shredded and I feel like I'm like an idiot for selling them because they're not going to be as good as working with a coach, but you could theoretically use those Massive in the off season, Shredded in diet or contest prep, and use it and have it be your own coach. It's not going to have the minor adjustments a coach actually will, but you enter your body composition stats, your height, your weight, your estimated body fat percentage, and it outputs a full diet with macros for every meal of the week, with a meal plan for every meal of the week, and then six to eight, I think, additional meal options or additional protein, additional carb, additional vegetable, and additional fat options for every single meal of the week. And as you enter your changing, body stats, as your weight changes and your body fat changes, when you re-enter those numbers, when you've changed enough to require a diet change, it will update the diet. A lot of work went into it, and I probably don't charge as much as I should for them, but I really, as I am involved in this longer, I'm really trying to be more focused on educating and stuff, and I'm proud of those programs.
Justin, in regards to the power building program, if you can't stay healthy squatting, what would you recommend as a primary alternative?
I mean, any back squatting, really, I mean,
That really depends on what's not healthy.
What's that?
That really depends on what's not healthy. Because, like, if it's your shoulders and elbows, just switch to a safety bar. But if it's your lower back or something, that's
I can tell you why I chose squats. I wanted a compound leg movement that also loaded like the posterior chain and forced weight across the hip. It's not. I could have rewritten the program without squats, and I think you can build quads very well without them. I would argue you need pressing of some sort, and I don't think a leg press for most people is enough. I mean, you could replace it maybe with hack squats, reverse hack squats, Jefferson squats, but the thing is, like, when I write a program like that, I just have to write what I feel is the best movements given what I'm trying to do with the movement in that case. It might not be the best movement for every single person buying it. Yeah. But it would need to be some type of heavy pressing type movement.
This is a good one. Is there possibly a metric to track novel stimulus when trying to get big, e.g. soreness one? No. Okay.
No. Well, the thing is, like, I think this is really good though. People are asking all these training questions about getting big. You don't get big from training. You only get big from food. That's the only thing that can. So when you're trying to get big, means you're trying to store excess calories on the body, but you want those calories to be from protein structures, which would be muscle tissue. And it doesn't matter, you can take two guys and have both of them on the exact same PEDs with the exact same genetics, everything the same on those two fronts, and have guy one train not very good, like kind of like a sissy, but have him be absolutely dead on perfect with nutrition. And you have the second guy train like an animal, but eat like shit. Same PED, same genetics. The guy who eats perfect and trains like a pussy is going to carry more muscle mass, more from a bodybuilding standpoint.
Yeah. Assuming you are eating perfectly and taking whatever you need to take, then the purpose of training is to create a stimulus. And soreness is in no way an indicator that the workout was good or bad. If anything, soreness and muscle damage tend to go hand in hand. So, like, I mean, personally, I find soreness to be kind of a satisfying feeling. But if you are sore for days on end after a training session, you have to recover from that damage. It's a hole you're digging that you have to dig yourself. Yeah. I even there was some research, Paul Carter cited it recently, where protein synthesis was a little higher, doing like some kind of excessive number of sets. It was like 8 to 12 versus 6. And so protein synthesis itself was higher, but the actual growth was not any higher. And that's because you dig yourself a bigger hole. Yep. Yeah, the body elevates protein synthesis to recover more, but it doesn't lead to any additional growth.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. That's kind of like when people want to do keto and they're like, well, you're burning fat. It's like, yeah, the fat you eat, you're still only burning fat from your body if you're in a deficit.
Yeah, I only ate fat. My body only burned fat. Oh, no shit.
Yeah, because that's all you ate. Yeah, Jimmy, I agree. I don't know, like Hassan, like the dude's so thick and like crazy, like just a crazy build, and he's finally coming in shape. I didn't get to see any pics or anything, so I don't know on this case, but yeah, I feel bad for the guy. Let's see. Oh, Justin is the greatest coach of all time. Thank you, Michael. I will I'll send the PayPal over. Michael Consol's, he's been a long-term client, real cool kid. He's we talk a lot of business stuff together too. I'd like to actually get involved in something business-wise with him at some point, but thank you for the comment.
Right now,
Where are we at? We're 40 minutes in. We got anything else? Joe Seaman done competing? No. Well, I won't. Not at liberty to say. I mean, no, I think we're going to do another show in the fall. Maybe sneak into the Olympia because he's staying really tight. He's cruising right now, and he's starting to look like he is. But for a little bit, I was like, Joe, are you lying to me about this? Because you look pretty freaking crazy. But I think we finally. Because he's been competing for a while and he's had the same kind of look up until this year. And this is the first year like I've been with him. And we, for the New York Pro, I think we were closest to nailing it. He's big and he has a good metabolism. It isn't insane, but I don't know that I've ever seen a guy burn through carbs during a carb up like him. I don't know what it is because he's not it doesn't seem like a guy who gets nervous, but for his second show this year, we did over 3,000 grams of carbs during the carb up, and he was flat. Yeah, and what's that?
How many days was that?
That was 3 technically, but Friday we weren't really carbing up. That was really 2 days because Friday we were just trying to hold it while we dried out. I guess 2.5 because Saturday morning we had him up early eating big again after he was dried out. But he just we were doing 200 grams of carbs a meal, and then adding carbs on top of it.
Jimmy asks, how important do you think it is to have a variety of protein sources on a daily basis versus all meals coming from one source? That's a good question.
So this is a tough answer. If we're going by what protein source has an amino acid structure closest to our own, I think it's beef. I think if I remember looking it up. So you may want to argue that that's the best way, but there's good pros and cons with everything because beef is higher fat. So you got to deal with that and find a way to account for those calories. Chicken is probably second closest, and it's pretty low fat. So you could argue that chicken is what you should eat every meal, but that's boring as hell, and chicken tastes like shit. Fish is extremely low fat, so you could argue that gives you more room to add fats for the calories from other sources, which is nice, and be really selective with your fats. So I don't think there's an exact answer. I think probably like most things in the sport, because this sport isn't a 6-week sport or a 16-week sport or even a 6-year sport, variety, because whatever you're doing, you need to be able to do for a decade or more to actually fully benefit from it.
Do you ever see people developing allergies or intolerances to protein sources?
Not protein sources, but I feel like there's a definite, correlation does not equal causation. So I'm saying this just as this is what I'm correlating what I've seen. It does seem like bodybuilders have a higher incident rate of colitis, GI issues, IBS, SIBO type things. And I myself have celiac, which I feel like the way things worked out is I never had it. I didn't eat any gluten for, 6 years or something as a bodybuilder. And then I, decided I was done competing, started eating gluten and had celiac, so I feel like it's possible. Like you remove a certain food source. I think it's probably more likely from removing sources for a long period of time. And then you reintroduce it and the body's a little confused maybe. And if you're prone to autoimmune issues, but that's, just totally guessing. I have no idea.
That all makes sense, but I always kind of attribute it to just the food volume. I mean, if you take a population of people and double their food intake, you'd probably see higher incidences of digestive problems.
Yeah, and I don't think most people realize how much food big bodybuilders eat, because there's just because I'm big now. I'm 265 or 270 and not especially fat, but the amount of food I eat compared to when I was, when my metabolism was absolutely flying and I was on everything that there was to take, and I was, almost 300 pounds, is like, it's like I'm probably eating less than half the calories, and the food volume is probably a quarter because I'm eating, you know, more nutrient dense stuff. I have a lot more fruits than I used to. I eat whole eggs more than I used to. So, what did Milo say? What Dave said? The food volume? Yeah, I think there's colitis, especially. You know, I see like so much of that. I think there's no way. David is absolutely massive. Dave's 300 pounds. Dave's one of the few times I've had someone say that it was like they're sick of being big. You don't get it. Usually, it seems like 300 pounds is the magic number. He's not tall. How tall are you, Dave?
5'9".
5'9", 5'8", 5'9". Yeah, he's a gentleman's 5'10". But no, Dave's a big boy right now. Dave's almost 300 pounds. I mean, we could easily have had you 310 or 315 this offseason because we pulled back twice, really.
Yeah, and I think it was more because of water retention than too much fat, but maybe that's wishful thinking.
No, it was water for sure. But I mean, if it, you know, some guys, it's the smart move, you know, but a lot of guys would have been so happy to see the scale, you know, and see that they still have abs and force through it, you know, and really harm themselves from the fluid volume of the water retention.
I like feeling okay.
Yeah, I think what we've done, so Dave, we've held his weight around 295 to 298-ish or so for quite a while, but we've reduced the food volume twice, I think. I mean, we might have reduced it, then slowly built up, and then kind of made another small reduction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a selfish question. Do you think after this prep, I'm gonna need another off season where I get like 40 pounds above stage weight?
No, and there's a reason why no one gets like 300 pounds is kind of, you don't hear anybody weighing 350. You rarely hear anything over 300 pounds, and there's a reason. There's no benefit. It's really, it starts, you know, other than if you want to just be 350, you know, but it's not going to improve your stage look. You know, at that point, the food volume is so outrageously high. Your stomach distension's bad. You get permanent distension, and you know, when you have years of high gas, you know, like being gassy, tons of food in your gut, that's really where like the sideways distension kind of starts to happen. You know, you're going to have like a forward distension just from the massive food volume. And but yeah, there's a reason 300 pounds is kind of the upper limit. It's just, you just start feeling so terrible. You know, I mean, 300 pounds of muscle is worse than 300 pounds of fat, because you know, it's like any like UFC fighter or any MMA fighter will tell you, you know, like there's only so much muscle you want. Eventually, it's just exhausting because that's all oxygenated tissue that sucks oxygen with any movement you do.
Yeah, the silver lining is that I can drop like 3 pounds of water and really feel much better.
Yeah. And I think after this offseason, the only real offseason goal is going to be metabolism.
Yeah.
You know, because then it makes prep easier.
Samson asked, when am I competing? I'm planning on doing nationals, which is in this first or second Saturday, December 8th, 9th. How long after intramuscular GH injection should I do fasting cardio to maximize lipolysis?
Anytime. I don't buy into the lipolysis related to GH injection timing at all. You might get a microgram of increased lipolysis, which over several 100,000 cardio sessions might be half a pound of additional fat, but you won't do several 100,000 cardio sessions unless you live to 500. It's just not, I mean, not to be like, I don't know, like a dick about it, but if you do an entire fat loss program or a contest prep where you don't do any IMGH injections before cardio, fasted cardio, and another one where you do them before every fasted cardio session, you won't look any different.
How much do you buy into the GH-mediated lipolysis altogether?
Very minimally, because they've even isolated the fragment, and no one uses it because everyone tries it, but they don't get any increased rate of fat loss from it. And find me someone with acromegaly who's lean.
Yeah, that's
true.
You
You won't. Every person with giantism is obese. I mean, other than people who get it before puberty. But the reason they're not obese is because of the height. You know, they grow so fast, so tall that their rate of growth is so high. Once they stop growing, you get like the Big Show or Andre the Giant or the French Angel or I mean, you can Google acromegaly and you'll see person after person after person, and every single one of them who has acromegaly after puberty will be obese.
I feel like that the whole GH making you leaner thing is something that originated on forums and it's just been parroted over and over and over again. And you have guys swearing up and down that they were like eating pizza and getting bigger and leaner.
Yeah.
They never post pictures.
Exactly. And it lends itself to that is because it's expensive. And so you want to believe this is happening. So what happens is someone buys GH for the first time, takes it, they're full, so they look better. They love how they look, and they maybe have been eating kind of shitty, and so now they're even fuller because they're holding excess water. But most of the water is in the muscle because of GH, and they're convinced themselves in the 3 or 6 weeks that they've been using it has been pure magic. But
yeah.
it's just not. I don't use any of that. It's even like the thing, like even if it can't violate thermodynamics either. You know, so you still have to be, if you're in a 500 calorie deficit for the day, you lose 500 calories of energy. Now, GH may increase the rate of protein retention, nitrogen retention. Certainly, GH is beneficial to bodybuilding up to a point, but I just don't buy it. I don't think, and I should think I've had people do both ways. I've had clients insist on using GH, IM, sub-Q, IV even before fasted cardio, an entire prep, and I've had most who don't, and I've never been able to notice a single shred of difference in rate of fat loss.
That's a really unhealthy road to go down too. I mean, that sounds hypocritical, but like of all the unhealthy things you can do, relying on a drug to get leaner or stay lean is probably one of the worst. Like the opposite of a healthy bodybuilder is someone who says, I'm going to take GH and Tren so I can eat more junk in the off season.
Yeah. Not that Oakley's saying that, but that is a common thing you see. Just if you lose fat it's the cardio. It's not unrelated to the GH. Where's Justin? Would you consider yourself to be a jack dilf? I wish my wife did. I personally don't want to fuck any dads, but I'd appreciate if someone wanted to do this one. Any benefits to IMGH injection or sub-Q? I will say a very strong opinion on GH right now. In 20 years of using it, having clients use it, and as far as clients, you could argue that I don't know that there's more than, there might not be any, but if there can't be more than like 5 coaches in the world who've worked with more people than me. I've just been doing it longer than everyone else, and I've had a high client load almost the entire time. As far as GH, I can say basically 2 things about it. 1, if it's real, it works, and 2, the more you take, the more GH effects you get. Timing, IM, sub-Q, IV, split multiple doses, 1 dose per day, 2 doses per day, before meals, before cardio, after meals, before workout, after workout. I've never, ever, ever been able to notice any different at all, other than someone using 5 IUs of GH. It's real, is going to get benefits more than someone who's using 0 IUs of GH, and someone who's using 10 IUs is going to see more GH effects, good and bad, than someone using 5 IUs. That's and anyone who claims distinctly otherwise, other than maybe what like a research study might say, which is different because they'll be looking at very specific things. But anyone that says anything other than that, I don't believe them at all, because I've had just way too big of a sample size to.
Have you at least seen a reduction in side effects with split dosing if the total dose is really large?
No. Well, yeah, good point. I generally, up to about 5 IU, I just say take it all at once in the morning. And the reason I say that is because your natural GH production is highest at night. And while it might only be like half an IU worth, like a few micrograms worth, it's better than nothing. But more than 5 IUs, I usually tell people to spread it out, because like just the load, as far the effects on like blood sugar at that point when you're taking 10 IUs all at once might be a bit much.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, because I am like, IM is less predictable with the duration of action because it's more dependent on the blood flow to that muscle. And so might get a little bit higher peak, potentially more IGF-1. I think that's what those show. Sub-Q, but you just don't notice the difference. Everyone wants to believe they will and do because GH is expensive. And so when they take GH and they don't transform into big Rammy in 3 days, they insist it can't be, it must be because they're not using GH the right way. And I think that's where it all stems from.
Yeah. Have you ever seen any benefit in recomping versus a bulk and cut diet? I would think no, but I'll listen to what you say.
Yeah, well, I hate the word bulk because Dave's got abs right now. I don't, like, I don't bulk. Well, like,
Well, I
what
mean,
do you mean, like recomping? Like, what do you?
we'll replace the word bulk with just an intentional gain, like a slight surplus. I think the recomping would be more like attempting to do both things at once on maintenance calories.
Yeah. From my experience, and I'm not saying this is correct, and other people might disagree, and other people might be right. In my experience, the biggest mistake people make when trying to add muscle is they try to gain scale weight. Gaining scale weight almost always means gaining body fat because muscle growth is just too slow to see steady scale weight changes. I mean, if you're gaining 15 pounds a year, that's just a little over a pound a month. If I drink a glass of water, it's more than that. So every water I drink or don't drink is more than the amount of muscle I'm gaining in an entire month. So if you're trying to change the scale weight, you're going to get fat. And then when trying to lose body fat, people try to just drop scale weight, which the same thing applies. In my experience, the best thing to do, and this is hard when you're starting out because everything is exciting and you want it to happen. It's just like anytime you do anything. And like a real good example of this is the stock market after COVID. When the stock market just exploded, everyone got their stimulus checks and everyone was a day trader, for like 6 months until they lost it all. When smart money backed out and everyone else was left with holding the bags. But people get really excited with things, and like William or like Buffett and like Charlie Munger and people have been doing it. Will say, pick stocks that are good companies. Don't jump on the trends. Have reason for investing. Let it develop over time. Look for low PE stocks. Look for dividend stocks. But that's boring. And so, like the same thing happens. What actually works long term in bodybuilding is boring. It's never try to gain weight. You should be trying to eat more and more good, clean bodybuilding food without getting fat, and that'll take care of the growth. Just try to eat more without getting fat, and then try to get whatever your metric is for progress in the gym, whether it's strength, progressive overload, intensity thing. Find a way to get better at it over time at the gym. If like when you take things to the extreme, that's usually where it becomes obvious. If you're eating 3,000 calories today and not very strong, and 2 years from now you're eating 6,000 calories a day with the same body fat and strong as fuck, you're going to be big, whether you want to or not.
The tough thing about not gaining scale weight is that it's more important for a smaller person to not do that than it is for a larger person, because the smaller you are, the less your body weight's going to fluctuate with water. And so the more every pound on the scale is likely to be a lot of fat.
Yeah.
So it's the people who most want to gain weight that need to not get overzealous with the scale weight.
Yeah, you just have to, it's hard to accept. And so many guys do this, and they want to be huge and they don't want to compete until they're ready to be a pro. And they're walking around at 270 and they've kind of convinced themselves they're not as fat as they are. And they finally do a diet. And then around 210 or 215, when they're still not shredded, they're like, oh my God, I was carrying so much fat. Why did I let myself do that? You wouldn't start golfing and expect to be like shooting under par on PGA level courses in a year or even 6 years. So you can't expect, because, Ronnie Coleman won his first Olympia at like 246 pounds. But every guy in the gym, when they want to become a bodybuilder, thinks they're going to compete at their first show as a super heavyweight. No one thinks they're going to join the PGA Tour because I really like golf, and things just take time.
Yeah. What is the current most overrated and underrated aspects of the bodybuilding life?
I'm out of it now mostly, but I'll say overrated is being big.
Yeah, exactly. It's really fun in the gym, and then it's quite inconvenient most of the places.
Yeah, and what the weird thing is, and what I noticed is when I start, when you want to be huge and jacked, is when you start out. And for most of us, it's when we're teenagers, and as a teen, that's shows respect, being jacked, being huge. It's that's cool. But by the time it takes so damn long to get huge and jacked that by the time you're in your 30s and you got kids and a corporate life, and it's almost embarrassing because you get you get prejudice against you, because you look like the big dumb meathead. And so it's almost like a negative in a lot of ways. And a lot of times you just you want to be big, and when you start out, you want everyone to notice it. But then when you are and you can't go anywhere without dudes hounding you, women running away from you, and everyone staring at you, it's just it starts being less cool.
I think underrated is probably the stuff that has nothing to do directly with bodybuilding, just the skills and discipline that you build from doing the same thing consistently for a decade or two.
That's a good point. I think because I've applied that to so many things. I keep bringing up stocks. Like I don't think my like retirement portfolio would be anywhere near what it is now if it wasn't for bodybuilding, because I learned like you really see firsthand the benefit of just, like stacking up days, and doing the right things and letting time pass, where, I see it like so many other people like look for the quick fix or the quick buck or where you learn that like really success in anything is just a matter of putting lots and lots of small wins together over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. How many years do you think a 140-pound bodybuilder would take to get to 200 pounds, assuming not too fat and decent condition?
15 pounds a year is like probably your upper limit on average. So whatever 60 divided by 15 is, 4.
Yeah. That seems doable.
Yeah, and people are like 15. Fuck that! I don't want to. Like, you might get 20 the first year. You might get 20, another year. But you're also going to have a 10 year. You might have a 5 year. It's just like that's just kind of 10 to 15 pounds a year from people who are really serious and focused. And someone like a David or a Jimmy or who else on here do I know has got like a ton of experience will tell you like 10 pounds is nothing to scoff at. 10 pounds of legit muscle, you look like a different person. Like stage muscle. 10 pounds of water, no. 10 pounds of stage weight, you look like a different bodybuilder.
Yeah. I think a lot of it comes down to whether or not you can be that consistent for that stretch of time. And I'd like to say like everyone could just do it. And it's worked out very well for me, but I've had kind of like a nice enough life to where I don't have a bunch of extenuating circumstances making it difficult, at least not the last few years. And if I have a genetic advantage, it's that I don't really like get sick. I don't lose my appetite. I don't really get hurt much. So I have all these things that make it easy to be consistent, relatively speaking. But, so if you can put 4 years together where you're not sick, you're not having a bunch of adverse life events, then yeah, you can do it.
Yeah. See, Jimmy just said, Jimmy's what, 233 or so right now. I can't remember your scale weight. I don't really look at guys' weight, but yeah. So there's an example, of, and he's a guy who does everything right. He's one of my guys who I know is eating every meal on point. And Bobby's another one right now, getting leaner every week, and the scale's the same, which is, Bobby's in that nice little groove that I don't want to tell people is not going to last. But sometimes you get that Goldilocks phase where it's like, man, the scale's not changing and I'm leaner every week. It's like, I'll pretend that it's some magic thing I'm doing right now, but really we're just in a kind of a little lucky Goldilocks phase, and we'll take it while we get it. But
is he prepping or gaining? Because that could be either one.
He's prepping. Well, he's not prepping for a show, but he's getting leaner. He's on So he's in that like real kind of that fun, because dieting, you go through the skinny fat or fugly phase, which sucks. You lose all the muscle fullness of the off season, but you're still fat. So you just like a smaller version of the same person. And then you stay flat because, you're dieting, and you start losing the fat. And there's that period where, when you're like 20% body fat, you might lose a percent of body fat every week, or you lose 2 pounds of fat a week, but 2 pounds out of 20% of your body weight is not very much. And you keep getting leaner. And every week, those 2 pounds of fat is a higher and higher percentage of the total body fat remaining. And then you kind of get to this end phase where it's like the Goldilocks phase. If you're not prepping, like when you're prepping, you just have to keep pushing, and your weight's going to keep going on, or you're going to hit those points where you flatten out. But there's a Goldilocks phase where you're pretty lean, sub-10, single digit body fat, but you just don't have that much body fat. If you're 190 and you have 9% body fat, you only got like 17 pounds of fat. So you lose 2 pounds of fat, you might weigh the same on the scale because you could be 2 pounds of extra water, but now you've lost like 10% of your total remaining body fat, which looks like a huge change every week. And that's when dieting's fun.
Yeah. Except what sucks is when you're in prep, by the time you get there, you start to feel bad to care. Prep. I just feel like everyone should do a bodybuilding prep just at one point. You just learn like so much about yourself and what you can tolerate and what suffering is. And it doesn't really stick with you, because not long after prep, you go back to complaining about all the little silly things that you have no reason to complain about. But somewhere deep inside, you remember like there's nothing you do that's as hard as that. Do I ever visit clients and attend their shows on site? Yeah.
Yes, that's really, really hard. Really hard. I have between 1 and 7 people competing every single weekend from April to June. And the same, I mean, through the summer, it's really just the national shows. So it's, and I'll be more likely to go to national shows because, like also for First Attachment, I'll probably be there. But I can't be all of them either also because I have four kids. They play sports. I have a wife who up to this point still likes me to be around a little bit. So it's hard. I do try to, but I really, really, I hate that because I feel bad. But I might have 7 people competing on a weekend. And who do I pick? Which show do I go to? And then how do I justify my family for me to spend the money? Because it's not like there are shows near my house. I'm flying there. Do I charge the client? Do I justify spending the money? It's really bad.
Maybe you should just make a policy that there's like 2 or 3 shows, amateur and pro, each that you're going to go to. Other than that, it's just a no.
It's really just the pro qualifiers or pro shows I'll go to now. And even the pro shows, I didn't go to any Joe's shows. It's just, I mean, I have to travel so much for First Attachment. And the other thing that people don't kind of, I think, accept is they're used to judging themselves in person, and they think I'm going to get a better gauge of their conditioning in person. What they don't realize is I've been doing this for 20 years. I've seen thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of pictures of people, and I've seen like 4 of them in person. Even when I do go to a show, like if I go, because like John's doing North Americans, and Salvy's doing North Americans also. We kind of plan to be there for First Attachment. Same with Nationals. We plan to be there for First Attachment. So I'll be there, even when I'm there with those guys, and they'll want me to view them in person. I still make them do check-in photos because that's just what I've prepped. Probably 1,000 people through photos. So I'm not gonna just say like, oh, I know exactly how you need to look in photos, but I'm gonna forget all that and just hope I know what you need to look like in your room right now under this great room lighting. Because you're in your hotel room with a light right overhead, looking in the mirror, and it's like, you look like Ronnie Coleman mixed with Phil Heath. No, I want the photos with the flash with the white background, and you look like shit because I know how to get you to look when you look good there. Look good on stage.
Yeah.
Florida seminar. If someone email me if there's a gym there. I mean, there's a ton of good gyms there. If they want to do one, we're always looking for them.
Oh, we're coming up on 15.
What's that?
We're coming up on an hour 15.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to call it, guys. I really appreciate everyone tuning in again. I think we'll probably continue maybe doing this live stream version.
Yeah.
Remember, all these questions are answered in far more detail on teamtroponin.com. You can see on the screen, I got it written down. That's our education website, Danny, David, and I, and we got other writers there. We're starting to have programs there. We'll have First Attachment supplements there, clothing there, but that's really where to get all the really in-depth information on this stuff. And then also join, because this is your chance now to ask and tell us what you want us to cover on Team Troponin. And for $19.99 a month, you basically get coaches answering the things you want answered. So I don't know that there's a better deal out there. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Jimmy.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, guys.
See you, everybody.
See ya.